Hello and welcome to Nerds of Legend. This week we decided to get a little jump on spooky season and start talking about some vampires. Bloodwalkers, nightwalkers, bloodsuckers, Nosferatus, that sort of thing. Draculas, and uh,
And
we
Strigoi.
and Strigoi, yes, and Menanganal and all things. We're going to try and take a very wide view and see all the different varieties of vampire. So this week we're gonna talk about vampires, and every episode for the month of October is going to be spooky themed, with the exception of we have our little collab going on with original GM on the 10th. But then beyond that, we're gonna be doing spooky stuff. So strap in, get your garlic and holy water out, and let's go and talk about some vampires. Brian, take it away. I forgot to introduce us. I'm Ben. That's Brian. Below me is Joel, and then there's Brendan. But sorry.
Way to knock it out of the park there, Ben. Good job.
All right. Well,
Well, let's start over.
End thread.
He's just very excited to hand over his eternal soul in exchange for the masquerade. You know how
All
it is.
right.
well, as Ben said, we're going to be talking about vampires. And before we get started, I want to say that before anything else, we should give a couple of content warnings for our listeners. Of course, due to the very nature of like the historical, I guess you could say, precedent of vampires, there's a lot that goes into that. They span multiple regions, multiple times, and of course, multiple cultures, not all of which are exactly friendly to the idea of like everyone being equal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But beyond that, of course, there's, talk about blood and all sorts of things like that. So, if you're not someone who has an easy time with some of these topics, especially in a more historical sense, then, it is okay to bow out on this one. But with that out of the way, I think one of the things that we should mention first and foremost, like I said, is that vampires really do span all countries, all time periods. They are basically one of the most consistent things when it comes to human folklore, with some other notable mentions being, of course, dragons and sea serpents. And they really do span the wide breadth of human civilization, with some of the earliest actual mentions of vampire coming to us from places like uh, Babylon, from Sumeria, from the Mesopotamian region, uh, even ancient Egypt, and everywhere has their own kind of like take on the vampire mythos, if you will. For like the Chinese, some of them are like ghosts. For like, there's so much that we can get into as far as the historical context when it comes to vampires, especially when you loosen what you believe to be a vampire. There's this thing where not all vampires have the same weaknesses or powers or strengths. Some of them aren't even what you might consider to be normal vampires. Like sometimes vampires can be regular ass humans, they can be ghosts, they can be demons. There's all sorts of like different interpretations of what the vampire is. There's a vampire god, and I think that one comes to us from, was that South America or Africa? I don't remember.
It sounds like a South American thing. That seems to be right up their alley.
I do
Yeah.
both, actually.
I mean, again, this is something that spans so much of human history, that when you really start to deep dive into it, you find that vampires are just one of those things where it's like, as long as human civilization has been around, we've been talking about undead creatures who feast on either the essence or the blood of the living.
Yeah, that is Civatateo is the vampire, is the Aztec vampire god.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have vampire bats, so
Yeah.
They do.
What shocked me is when going through a lot of the books, is that the newest thing of vampires is the actual name vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's about the most recent development of it, is the naming, and that came from Germany in 1723. Was the first time it was actually put
Vampire.
down as a vampire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the
I
etymology comes to us from Hungary, if I'm not mistaken.
What?
The etymology of the word vampire, I believe, starts with Hungary.
Yep. Yeah, and if you look back,
But it was. See, where was it? I'm trying to pull my notes up. Yeah, Hungary seems to be a big one. Hungary, Romania, Turkey all seem to be like the hottest spot for them, and they have the most unusual legends of vampires. Some are highly specific to the region. I have the book upstairs, but the book by what is the one I loaned you, Ben? By
Demons to Dracula.
Yeah, and then that one I was reading suggests regional specifics, such as hyper isolated areas would start coming up with legends of if you left a pumpkin on the vine for 10 days and one of those days went over a full moon, it could come as a vampire. You're like,
so there's pumpkin vampires somewhere.
Pumpkin vampires, there are. There's a fur-covered vampire in China.
And China's got like 30 different kinds of vampire, I think. You have like the famous one with his like the one-legged hopping vampire or whatever that would hunt people down. You've got the one you mentioned. I think there's a bunch more. Hello, Melissa is joining us.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
The dog's vet called. I left a message earlier today.
Yeah. So I think where we might want to go is all the way back to the beginning. You know, you've got
that's Mesopotamia.
Well, ancient Egypt actually. So
That's also in Mesopotamia.
Kind of. So you've got all the way back. If you look, there's in ancient Egypt, you've got the myth of Sekhmet, who was sent down to basically as a punishment. He sent her down to punish humankind for disobedience. The sun god Ra did. And then she went on a slaughter of punishment all across ancient Egypt. He finally ended her planet-draining thirst by dyeing a bunch of beer red, and she drank so much that she slept for 3 days. So that's fun. And then you come closer to modern day, move forward a little bit. You've got the Sumerian myth regarding Lilith, where she's kind of like the original in Jewish folklore. Yeah, Lilitu. Yeah.
Adam's first wife and the mother of monsters is what they.
Yeah, they were. There was a Babylonian myth where she'd slip through windows looking for victims to take the place of husbands and wives who they themselves never had. So there's sort of like you have the original vampire of Lilith, but then you also have the Lilitu wind spirits, and then kind of you've also got even the Mananganal from Philippine folklore, which would sneak into houses and drink the blood from women's pregnant bellies and that sort of thing. You know, all kinds of fun stuff.
As one does. You are correct. I have to make a correction. You are right. Egypt is not Mesopotamia. I always thought it was. I'm ignorant.
I wasn't going to challenge you on it, but...
No. If I was wrong. I always, for some reason, envisioned it all in that area, and it's way further east. So I apologize for my ignorance.
That was very professional. We don't want all this hate mail coming in from angry Mesopotamians.
I don't want to get added by ancient Mesopotamians. So thank you for correcting yourself, Joel.
Ancient Egypt's just gonna invade us any day now.
No one's going to come after us with that cute little squishmallow.
What Squishable? Oh, that one. Focus. Not talking about Squishable.
Sorry, we kind of took the
the thing
discussion from you there, Brian. But well,
You're good.
So, what are we focusing on first? Creation, formation. What are we?
In the beginning.
Well, again, vampires are so numerous that there's no one specific thing sort of. I think that probably the best way to start is probably with the actual formation of the etymology of the word vampire and kind of go from there. Because for one, that's what we have the most information on, given the fact of, that like right around that time period, we were, actually starting to keep proper records and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more information that we can rely on going forward. But also that is where a lot of the more common, like actual vampire lore comes from.
mm-hmm.
Like if you're looking for folklore that people are going to recognize as vampires, then from that point forward, moving on is, kind of where you look to. Also, I find it incredibly interesting that the region in which the word vampire comes to us from, Hungary, is exactly the same region that about 300 years prior was home to Vlad Dracula.
Mm-hmm. Vlad Dracula, the Impaler.
The Impaler. Yes.
They had a long-term history of believing, and I believe before vampires were mentioned was the Strigoi. That had a long history prior to the actual belief of the vampire in Romania.
And even if you look further back than that to like the Middle Ages, you have the rise of a blood disorder called porphyria, which is where a lot of the original like vampire sort of characteristics came in. You've got light sensitivity. It causes receding gums that give the impression of like elongated fangs, and then it can even get so severe that you lose your ears and noses, which is very synonymous with the looks of like Nosferatu, for instance. Like you've got these
not the movie version though.
Yeah,
but,
obviously, but like the you have that sort of thing, and you've got
in listening to a number of podcasts, horror history was one that I listened to that was talking about how vampires were, especially in Eastern Europe, were used to explain various illnesses, and like tuberculosis, as you would waste away, would become. That was evidence that a vampire was attacking you. Not that you were sick, but that something was draining your blood, and that's why you were wasting away.
Well, it would strike a whole household, but it's got a very TB has a very like long incubation period. So
what would happen is you'd have one person get sick and they would die from it, and they would be like, "Oh, it's a terrible tragedy" and whatnot. They wouldn't immediately connect it with vampires, but then what would happen is because those people back in the time period were often either poor or incredibly uneducated. I mean, they weren't schooled in like modern pathology and whatnot. They didn't know how bodies decompose and so on and so forth. They didn't know about like proper burial and whatnot. So what they would often do is they would because they don't have a lot of money, they would bury their family members themselves, and they would do so in kind of more or less shallow graves.
Right.
And when inevitably, someone would like get sick or whatnot, you'd have someone else in the household kind of like start to fall to the illness. They would wonder about that. They'd be like, "Oh, why is my daughter getting sick?" And for some people, it'd be like, "Oh, well, I mean, tomorrow is Monday, so I mean, why does the sun rise instead?" Of course, but for other people, they would be like, "Oh no, it's a dark curse. Your household, you had someone else die." So, and then they would like go and they would like dig up the body and whatnot of like the suspected vampire. And because like Hungarian winters were incredibly cold, the bodies would be very well preserved.
And the fingernails and hair would keep growing, and so they'd be like,
Exactly.
"It was obviously undead."
Yeah, like there was this condition where like fresh blood would actually even be seen around the mouth of the corpse and whatnot. So they would connect that, and they'd be like, "Oh, it's a vampire," you know.
Right.
And that's actually where the poster that you guys can see that hangs behind me all the time comes from. This particular vampire poster behind me details the proper method in which you were supposed to destroy your suspected vampires.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It was like basically like a like a poster that would have been around that would have been like, you think your loved one's a vampire? Well, call dial 877 vamp away and get.
Not quite. And actually, you can see my copy here is actually burned. Like the edges around it have been kind of like burned and ripped, you know, and whatnot. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. It's all in this very like flowing kind of script and whatnot. It details how you're supposed to drive a stake through the heart, how you're supposed to cut the heart out, how you're supposed to
Never heard of the
use like the garlic flowers and like actually stuff the mouth of the suspected vampires with it. You're supposed to like there's a whole ritual that goes into it.
What's interesting is that the like for modern day, this whole thing of getting rid of vampires wasn't actually that old of a like there's been recent activity on the vampire front. There's actually in 2005 there was a case in a Romanian village where there was a laborer passed away, and his family decided he'd become a strigoi in 2003. So 6 dudes went, exhumed this guy's body, staked it, sprinkled it with garlic, and opened up his ribcage with a pitchfork, took out his heart, burnt it, and drank the ashes in a glass of water. This was in 2005.
What's with the ass drinking? Is that like hoping to become one themselves? Like
I don't know. Maybe it's to like make sure that they like he can't come after them or something. Yeah, I was like, whoa.
I've seen ads for that. You put it in your water when you want a little flavor.
Yeah, it's
There were also someone hypothetically on this podcast in the late 90s, early 2000s went to vampire clubs.
That's weird. I don't know what you're talking about. Shut up.
Mm.
Anyways, that's not important.
Yeah, the vampire nightclubs are a big thing. Sounds like someone might have a inside scoop into what's going on there.
That's for everybody today. Thanks for joining Nerds and Legends.
Would you like to give us an overview, Melissa?
He put on sparkles before sparkles were cool.
Oh, nice.
Wait, so Joel went to the vampire nightclub, not Missy?
All right,
I want to hear this story.
yeah, fuck all of you.
Let's
You
hear
know
it,
what?
Joel.
I think we need this for proper historical context in
Right.
terms of like
I think you do.
This is my
the history of
my-
vampires as told by Joel's the Sparkle.
Yeah,
Band.
no, I don't think I need to talk to any of you anymore. I hate you
Come
right
on,
now.
tell the story. Tell
I am
us the story.
That was a very awkward time.
Come on, Joel.
No,
Spill.
no fucking no.
Spill.
No, it was when Underworld came out. Everybody would be like,
Oh, yeah. Everyone wanted to have a vampire nightclub.
yeah,
That's true.
like that's not even that cool. It's not the vampire nightclub. There was one called Neo in the area and in Aura in Chicago. And you would just go there. They were just like goth clubs.
And they'd have,
Okay.
like,
But then goth was like, we're all vampires. I'm like, okay.
yeah.
Big fans of platform heels and latex.
Yeah.
No,
Fake veins.
no.
The whole BDSM club,
mesh
you know,
shirts,
where
though.
Mesh shirts.
Yeah, that was the mesh shirt time, and go fuck yourself.
Shoulder length ponytails.
Look at how happy this evil bitch is. Like,
you got like the cut off like mid waist sort of thing.
no, it
People
went all
are-
the way down.
That is
Thank
also
you.
very happy.
Ben,
Spike chokers
I
and
feel like you're fulfilling a fantasy for Ben right now. There's a light to his eyes that I have never seen before.
Ben's just over here like, oh man, I can't wait till Saturday.
Finally, a reason to wear my harness out in public. Oh, shit.
Yeah, no, that was what we did. I had long hair and it was dark.
Well, I mean,
Missy, are the pictures?
everyone's gonna
No,
have long
first
hair.
there's not pictures. Don't be
Damn it.
stupid. You didn't have technology to record embarrassing pictures. You had to pose for that shit back then. So, thank God for low-key technology.
Oh man.
Now, if any of you
That just made
contact
my
Brad,
fucking
he
week.
probably does have pictures. Yeah,
Ben just lights up.
right?
All right.
You give me your phone. I will step in.
Missy has pictures. Just send them to me later, Missy. It's okay.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
you.
No, did. I definitely won a contest wearing a mesh shirt and a black suit.
It's getting better.
It keeps getting better. Do you have like the crappy fangs too that like cut your
Oh,
gums?
fuck no. Mine were super expensive. Go fuck yourself.
All I'm picturing right now is
And I was
Yep.
also like crazy skinny. Like I made Brendan look fat back then, so I was like very thin
So
with like
you're-
long hair.
so you're basically Jeff Hardy with a beard.
Kind of. I didn't have a beard. I couldn't grow facial hair till I was 30. Till I was 30.
So you're basically Jeff Hardy without the ladder to jump off.
pretty
of.
much.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry.
We make our own ladders in this household.
It's perfect.
So, for those watching, this is the last episode Missy will ever be on. Ever. And I myself may not be on any more episodes due to living in the same house as you.
Joel, if it makes you feel any better,
Actually, it was a lot of fun. Like in hindsight, it was embarrassingly stupid, but I was like 20, so who cares? But
if it makes you feel any better, before I even knew what LARPing was, when I was like 10 or 11, we went out to the forest preserve and pretended to be hobbits and like set up
I
a
don't see
tent.
why he's
and-
saying this like I wouldn't do this today.
Gathered mushrooms.
I would
and-
100% buy it.
Yeah, so we did that, and then we
Oh, we
went
have to talk about vampires. Shut the fuck up. We have more work to do.
Well, actually, it's funny that you should say that because there are a lot of people out there who take this really, really seriously to the point where like several books have been written about like how to become and be an actual vampire. One of my favorites of which being the new Vampire Handbook. This thing
Where does he
is a
pull this shit out?
fucking trip.
I'm telling you. He's got like a bag of holding. He just pulls weird shit out.
You know, speaking of
Honestly-
Vampires, the occult truth.
my brother's really big into airsoft, and for airsoft
Oh.
communities, you need large properties to play on. It's very similar to paintball. The number 2 source of revenue for these places is vampire LARPs.
No.
So- I'm not kidding you. So like groups of people like they do the masquerade, so they have like different clans and whatnot, and they'll it's sort of like a living LARP. So you have like quests and you like have to convene with the others, and you have reputations and that sort of thing. And they'll use the airsoft property or secluded farmland, whatever. And you'll pay an entrance fee, and you have like a character sheet and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, you'll get like people who come up to you and they're like, they'll be all like fucking like they'll dress all sort of like scantily clad and whatnot, and they'll have like one of those like finger like claw things on them and whatnot. They'll come up to you and they're like,
Those were so popular back then.
yeah, they'll like hold it underneath your chin and they'll be all like, yeah. So what do you want, my deliciously, wickedly sweet honey? And then it's just this whole thing where they just
2003.
yeah.
No, I was not turned on then because it was
Like,
literally
They were. It's like a literal cult, is what it is. It's
Look
literally
at Ben
a
right now.
cult.
Look, you broke him. Look at him like you see the hourglass turning over his head.
It's like,
Yeah.
I want to just go see.
Right,
I want to
Ben.
go just to see what's going on.
Do you remember when I go to the Pagan Student Association to see horror movies?
Yeah, that's right.
You learn a lot at the PSA.
Yeah, we should
Just-
go, guys.
like, they
We should
actually,
go
like-
just to see it.
There are like psychological conditions though, like
Mhm.
the Redfield
Mhm.
syndrome is a thing.
Mhm.
Like people
Right.
actually,
Well, porphyria is still actually like a thing too. Like,
yeah.
it happens. It's like a blood condition that occurs. That's just funny.
Well,
to me,
especially
like,
with
it's
the
like-
innovation of like, because nowadays a lot of people also talk about like psychic vampires, and I'm not talking about like in a sense,
Oh,
yes,
Robin
what we
Hood.
do in the shadows, like yeah,
Alan
Well, like,
Robinson. the best character on the show.
Yeah, no, but there are people who do believe that sort of thing, where they will literally go around and they will cause other people chaos just to like feed off the essence that comes from like their
Like,
frustration.
cause
And
people's
I had to read a book
misery.
about it for work, and it was like one of those self-help ones, and I was so mad at like I spent like probably several hours bitching about it to Joel.
I remember that. Yeah.
When you had to
I
like
remember
read.
like the psychic vampires. They do have a one overwhelming sign when they announce themselves. They usually walk in and without anybody asking, will say, "I don't like drama," and that's how you know you're in the presence of the psychic vampire.
Yes.
I like to.
I read-
I don't like drama, but
I don't like drama, but, and then then drama ensues.
The second one is when someone says, "I like to think of myself as an empath," and then they start talking shit about other people, and you're like,
Yep.
"Here it is."
Mhm.
Yep. That's the tell. You're like, oh, so you like making people talk about things that they don't want to talk about, and so that you can like empathize with their misery. But meanwhile, you just put someone in a bad mood.
Yeah, but the Midwestern psychic vampire starts out with, "I don't like drama." That's our regional tell for the psychic vampire in the Midwest.
Yeah, if you go beyond blood, if you think about the basic vampire relationship, it's like
Stealing someone's life essence.
yeah. It's a parasitic relationship, prolonging. It's essentially a selfish act, right? Prolonging the life of the predator from the prey. So I mean, other than blood, I mean, you can be a psychic vampire, you can be a financial vampire, really. But so from a historical context, it's tied into.
I think the idea of a financial vampire, that's pretty.
Don't look up Findom, Joel. Don't
No, I'm not.
don't Google that. But from a historical context, I mean, think about it. Mythology basically comes from a lack of understanding. Fear comes from a lack of understanding. And when people are praying to the sky and they're afraid of thunderstorms, and you know, you start at the Bronze Age and you're in an environment where you don't have a lot of answers and everyone's dying at 35, if you're lucky. That's where this mythology brews. And so
As soon as you said "don't look it up," Missy was like, "I have to look it up."
So she's like over here Googling
That's
like
on me.
immediately.
That's on me.
no, I wasn't the one who typed it in.
You knew that's
But yeah. So if people, you know, if life is not prolonged, if life is there's no social contract, right, and life is brutish and short, you will look to any means to prolong it. I mean, you think about like witchcraft in a historical context. It was empowering, or the concept of it, even if whether or not you believe in it, or if it's real, or if magic's real or not, the concept of a woman in a very in a society that doesn't give her empowerment and a voice, being able to lift herself up to the past the confines of social, you know, shackles, is very alluring.
like a succubus, like those type, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you even think about like Elizabeth Bathory, I wouldn't necessarily say she was a vampire, but she bathed in the blood of virgins.
Yeah.
She definitely cosplayed.
like-
She's actually in here too.
At the very least, Joel, yeah, she at the very least was a cosplayer. You know,
Yeah. You know,
Heavy
like,
LARPer.
This fascination with blood, right? Ben
Yeah.
said earlier that there was something about like blood as the life force, right? It's something pumping through your veins, and so, and then going back to Brian's point, like, of course you'd cut their heart out, but like my favorite part is like when you look at like some of like the more modern retellings, and they laugh about, you know, oh, how do you learn to kill vampires? Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And
There
it's
she
like,
is.
oh, well, we told everyone, like, you know, like, so you, like,
Yeah, the
everything
White
you
Court.
see is in, you know, in print doesn't work because we don't really care. So, like, it's this really, like, it's an interesting dichotomy, but I know about the history, not the
No,
modern.
it's just the historical. We're not talking about the modern. Just, I mean, it started out. It seems like the most common beginning for them is the belief of what demonic curse. Am I correct? Like that's
Yep.
they were either possessed by a demon because demons can't have their own body, or they were cursed by somebody to have a demon possess them and give them long life. Then it's
Well, keep in mind, back in like the way back sort of days, like you had like not all the gods were good and friendly and like
Right,
kind
but they
of
were
like,
very, very real. That's one thing that
oh
was
yeah,
back in then, and even up until the 1600s, the god and 1700s, the gods were very real. God was very real. The devil was very real, and they were actively influencing the world around them. And it went back through. If you look through most cultures, almost every one of them had a deity or deities of some
Mhm.
sort moving in and out. And their machinations could be seen everywhere. So if you did something wrong,
Well,
you upset one of them, or you pleased one of them.
Hmm.
you weren't the people, the mass, right? The masses weren't really educated until arguably the Age of Enlightenment. You could say arguably because that was still rich people, but more
Mhm.
people put
There's
stock
more
in
access.
reason than they did this fantasy, this kind of this, oh, it must be God, it must be these forces, it must be
Hmm.
the demon. And then you get this brief little stint where everyone's like, yeah, no, everything's fine. And then it comes back with like everyone was superstitious and all of these things. And so you have these ebbs and flows, but ultimately like people do believe in it or something. And then there is this turn, whether Dracula isn't the first, but it's most certainly the most popular. You have the other ones that come before it, and people from there it becomes this fetishization, right? Like
that is
Yeah.
a great word.
you
to
know,
say.
like, and then it slowly turns into this sexy vampire club going
Hey, I want a
4
contest.
days
Shut up.
something.
That's a very good point though. It's almost like a wrestling match. If someone's standing up in the back like, oh, these moves are fake. Oh, it's predetermined. There has to be some suspense of you have to suspend disbelief to some extent. There's a fervor. There's a whole a social fervor, a frenzy about vampires running around your village. If everyone believes God is real, damnation is possible, these things could be real, you have to
Mhm.
if you lend believability to it, that's going to make a
What
scurrilous rumor grow like wildfire.
Mhm.
What is interesting is, especially in the Hungarian region, Romania and stuff, is you could tell the isolation and where you get the very
Hmm.
region specific. Again, to Haunted History, the podcast I was listening to the other day, one small town believed if a baby was born with teeth, it was going to be a vampire.
I mean, duh.
And like, if a child was born
That
out of
baby
wedlock,
that baby draws blood from like first fucking chop. Of
yeah,
course
but
a
it's
vampire.
living while it's doing it. I didn't say it doesn't.
This is before buying formula too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I mean, it's just there's some unique
oh,
ones
it
like
bit me, must be a vampire.
overarching of like monsters and like demons and coming in there, and that's how you get it. Or witchcraft. Witchcraft came to a big one as it moved into Europe from as it moved more into Western Europe. It became very big into witchcraft. You could pay to become a vampire, and then but these little pockets of weird, I love. I think they're so interesting.
Have you guys ever heard of the lawn mowing devil?
I pay him $200 every month.
Mhm.
Come over.
It's a little bit off topic, but it does kind of like show how a lot of people at the time period really believed in like, angels and devils and demons and so on and so forth. Where some guy in like I think it was England or whatnot, I forget exactly where it took place.
England went broke with the weird.
Yeah,
Springfield
uh,
Jack, yeah. Up and away.
yeah.
Hey, yeah, Springfield
Um, well, no, like, I guess there was like a land dispute between two neighbors or whatnot, and one neighbor really wanted like the other neighbor to like cut their grass or something like that. And the other guy was like, "Oh, fuck you! I don't fucking need to do that. Like fucking, I
Bring
got too
on the
much shit to
demon.
do. Yeah." They was like, "I got too much shit to do." They were like, "Oh, fucking tomorrow's Monday, and fucking, I got all this shit to do. Fucking, like, I got no time. I got no time. Tomorrow is Monday. Tomorrow is Monday.
Right.
Tomorrow is Monday." So you know what? Just let the devil do it. Let the devil fucking mow my lawn. I don't even fucking care. And it's like one of the first instances of like what we could call today like crop circle sort of thing. Because like shortly thereafter, like his whole field was on fire. But like when the fires died down, like they found like the grass had been like mowed. It's this really weird thing. Hold on, I want to find this. Go ahead, talk.
I really feel that if the
he's not done.
He was looking something up. I thought. Oh. I just feel that if the devil would have done more like service-based things, he would be much more popular. Like if the devil's like, listen, I'll cut your grass. Like after a while, they'll be like, I'll give you my soul if you keep my yard clean. That gives me so much free time.
You know,
instead of the outward demands for you just roll your eyes. That's pay people.
You got a good point though, Joel. You know,
he always is doing nefarious stuff. The devil never comes up and is like, hey, I'll cut your grass and trim your hedges, for the rest of your life. Just give me that soul. And somebody's like, man, I can get so much free time.
So
I'll harvest your crops.
Only cosplaying vampires.
Yeah, so damnation obviously is scary to a medieval population that thinks that the afterlife is very real. So,
right, yeah.
So that's a very good point, Joel, because what helps the belief of vampires persist? Not only is there a fear, but there has to be some sort of invested interest because
it's the escape. It's the escape.
Yeah. How good does something have to be for a person to weigh eternal damnation?
Well, the thing is, that's the thing with the vampire is like, they don't. Is the fear? A lot of it is the fear of what comes after, and a lot of these places at the time where vampires were very, very popular. We're talking like, 13th to 17th century. Where like vampires behind every tree, and that was when the church took a very dark turn. It was very much into the fire and brimstone, and then you see the Western churches go into malefactus or something like it. Literally, and you see like the Dante's Inferno, which is there's nothing in the Bible about 100% made up, but that was what hell was. Hell was this nightmarish hellscape of just things based off everything you did. And now the belief was Catholicism was king at the time, and you had to confess all your sins. And if you missed one, that's it. You're hosed. So like you're done.
Yeah.
At the time. No, that was after. After were the indulgences. That was in like the 1400s. But so I mean, like they lived in perpetual fear of the devil is there. Your soul was something he could snatch. Hell was very real, and just about everybody went there.
But you didn't know germs.
Just about everybody cool.
Like, germs weren't a thing, right? So going back to tuberculosis, like...
Yeah, there was no explanation of why you did that.
You had these people who, potentially, like, maybe you come into the town and you mark the doors and you do all these things, but then you're fighting with the fact that that's witchcraft. And and then you're damning yourself anyway. So you're dying because you're a vampire, or you're damning yourself to hell because you're partaking in ritual.
Yeah,
so, like, where do you
very poor understanding, and everybody telling you this is wrong. So you're screwed any way you look at it. And then something comes on, a story of someone's like, I'll bite you on the neck, drink all your blood, and you're gonna live forever. And they're like, so no hell? No hell. You're gonna have to stay at nighttime. Look, whatever. I don't have to see people in the daytime anyway. They're disgusting because they're all covered with lesions. So
they're all falling over from plague all over the place.
Yeah, they're all falling over from plague, and then they don't have to worry about it. And nobody understood any of it. Like the funniest thing is that the Black Death destroyed most of Europe, and it was spread by fleas. Like like 60% of Europe died. There was one strain of the Black Death that from contraction to death was 12 hours. Like whole families would go to bed healthy, wake up, and then the next morning all of them were dead. Nobody woke up dead. Sorry. But
we're talking about vampires, so maybe they did wake up dead.
No, they didn't. Vampires don't get the plague because they're too cool for that. Yeah. I know. I was one.
Got the insider info over here.
Right. She's super pleased with herself. But I mean, it shows the lack of understanding, heavy spirituality, which again, nobody being able to like fact check what's in the story. So they're just like, well, this guy told me and he's got a bigger chain than I do, so he must be more important. And
did you find the Mowing Devil, Brian?
I did. I dropped it in the chat for us. It is a story that comes out of 1678, actually, in England. Basically, there's two farmers, a poor farmer and a rich farmer. the rich farmer hires the poor farmer to basically cut his field of oats for him, sort of thing. The two of them, couldn't agree on price. The poor farmer apparently did like a really poor job, so the rich farmer was all like, "Oh, I will have the devil mow my lawn before I ever hire that man again." And what happened was overnight, the rich farmer had his field of oats mowed for him, but not all of it. There were neat little circles that spanned the area in an acre and a half that had been cut into his field. And it was so precise, and everything looked like it had been burned. So, like it was supposedly an exactness that was too impossible for any human to accomplish, especially under the short time frame of like the cover of darkness, like a single night sort of thing. And so, that's where the whole thing comes from, where like, people believed that, their angels and devils were real because you had like stories like this cropping up every now and again. You'd actually have like a mowing devil.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, like if the devil can mow your lawn, then how is a vampire like that big of a jump? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
I would go to challenge the vampires why they're not adding more value to your daily life. Like,
I know, right? If the devil is gonna mow your lawn for you because you're all like,
vampires could at least clean the hedges.
Yeah, I know, right? Like
water the plants.
That's crazy to think about, Brian. That's crazy that
That's why it's
crop
the best
circles,
time to do it at night. You don't have to see the help.
Crop circles date back that far. That's crazy.
Yeah. The pretense to vampires becoming this this social massive across the planet, this huge story that everyone contributes to. It would be crazy to think that what pushes it, at least from a European perspective, is the prerequisite staunch faith in Judeo-Christianity, like fueling vampirism, because first you need to believe in an overarching massive system of like the firmament above us and what creates us and everything. So if you've already done that, vampires sneaking into your house and drinking your blood is like a short hop.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's like, why would you ever like say to yourself like, no, vampires can't be real, but this other thing is 100% real? Like,
right.
Vampires are dumb, but angels, they're 100% there.
And then if our whole town has plague and there's one guy who has his own well and doesn't have plague, well, he's got to be the vampire.
That's
It is
another
funny
thing.
how that was the one that they would blame.
And
ever since like vampires have been around in popular culture, there's always been this huge thing regarding like class consciousness. Because what is the modern gothic vampire if not like the rich fucking lord who is like essentially ruling over a kingdom and is this immortal undead fucking villain? And like,
what is crazy rich and like super beautiful and.
Well, here's the thing. Who is the biggest psychic vampire you can think of in your lifetime? It's probably your boss at work, right? Like, think about this for a second. It's the guy who lords over everyone. It's the guy who's just like sitting back in the chair, like fucking Curse Estrada, where he's just like sitting there and he's just like, oh, you just got like a wine glass or something, fucking shit. And he's just like, let's let the peasants do it. Oh, what's that? You want a day off? Well, tomorrow is Monday, so yeah. He just fucking like throws it to the ground. And it's like, perfect. What is a man?
So what we're positing is like the entire origin of the vampire mythos dates back to class warfare.
I mean, doesn't it make sense? If people
believe
more money,
if you make more money, you have a better diet. You probably live longer.
Yeah, that's been shown throughout the ages. People live because. I mean, you have just having access to clean water will extend your life exponentially.
You don't age as hard as the person next to you because you don't have to work out in the fields every day. Yeah. So all of a sudden you're like, man, that Duke such and such up on the hill.
Your whole life, and you look at him, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
That sun's been rough on you. Like.
mean, even in a modern context, you have class warfare and vampirism. Look at Blade. Deacon Frost in Blade is a young working class turned in the late 70s vampire who listens to trance music on his Walkman, and centuries old vampires are like, oh no, you can't access
Yeah,
the
you're not
server.
a pureblood.
You're not a pure you're not a pureblood.
Yeah.
So there's
Oh, you saw the sun? Disgusting. Like, yeah. You know.
And that's gets you back to another thing. Like vampires are so ingrained to our popular. Fucking Dracula, actual Dracula, is canon in Marvel properties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's true.
He crosses so many stories. Like one of my favorites. I love the Dresden Files. Always have been a big fan. But Dracula comes into the Dresden Files as the head of the Black Court, and Bram Stoker was a member of the White Court. He wrote Bram Stoker's Dracula because the Black Court vampires were taking over Europe. So he wrote a How to Kill Them book. That was in a story, and I'm like, I love it, but it's saturated everywhere.
So wait, in Dresden Files, is Bram Stoker also a vampire then? Is that what's going on, or what?
No, he's a hunter.
That was a long time
He's a vamp hunter. Got it.
Yeah.
Haven't read them, so I don't know.
So it's the story and the evolution of it. And I don't know when it took from these like monsters that were hiding in the corner, behind like the Strigoi all hide in the trees and they're in the forest and the woodlands and they steal children. And Striga's all same thing. They steal children out of their bedrooms. When did the vampire cross over into this like thing? This
I know.
Beautiful thing. Go ahead.
I know.
Go ahead. That's an actual question.
It was with Bram Stoker's Dracula, because the biggest theme up to that point. I mean, there were some things that came before, but like Bram Stoker is the one that cemented the idea of like the more human, sexy kind of vampire. Because
remember in the beginning. Go ahead.
So there was a book that came before. It was Carmilla. I thought it was.
Yeah, Carmilla was just before it, and it had the whole like sexy lesbian vampire. Yeah. Although back then it was more like vampirism is also like connected with lesbianism to it was rough.
It's just so funny because they're like nope, not this one. They're like like man with three women, way better.
That's cool. Like, a woman with another woman, disgusting. That's nobody wants to see that. And then all the readers are like, "This is the best book I've ever read."
But like Victorianism as a whole, like you have this turn of literature, right? So Queen Victoria is a very moral person, but under her, Penny Dreadfuls, they were super popular. All of the supernatural fiction you had, detective fiction, Wilkie Collins, Sherlock Holmes, all of that came under her, and so it's this turn, and so you have this tension of like this over sexualization of things that are.
Well, you had this repression. You know what I'm saying? It was this, So you actually see this really clear evolution from like the vampires that were all thought to be like these unholy monsters, these demons and whatnot,
right.
And from the Victorian era moving forward, especially with things like Carmilla, with Bram Stoker's Dracula, you had this more modernization of like the idea of these creatures being human and evil, but like still in some way
they were very sensual. And
they were made a lot more sensual. Although
you also have the vampire.
Remember that in Bram Stoker's there was a ton of like sexual innuendos and just out and out sex.
Sort of actually.
Before Carmilla,
because like the actual book had
Go ahead.
Before Carmilla, you actually have The Vampire by John Polidori, who's one of Mary Shelley's like writing buddies too.
Yeah. I was watching something on the Travel Channel today. It was like Beyond the Unknown, and it like happened to be that story.
Yeah.
So like everyone knows that's where, well, not everyone, but a lot of people know that's how Frankenstein came to be, right? They're at the lake.
Yeah, he challenged her to write a scarier story than The Vampire. And she was like, all right.
and he
It's
like
Frankie time.
I know, and he's such Byron is such a piece of
Yeah.
but he like essentially was like, "Oh, you did it better, fuck yourself,"
Yeah.
and then threw it out. And then this guy came and was like, "I want to be your friend," and he was like, "You suck at writing," so he found the discarded vampire outline
Yeah.
essentially and wrote it like, and it
So
became
wait, so the vampire book was like the outline was written by Mary Shelley, and then
No.
no
By
Byron.
the
Byron.
Byron.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this other guy was like wrote the story based off the interesting.
And Byron was pissed.
Yeah.
But like,
It's like, you stole my story.
yeah. We could
If you-
talk. We could
yeah.
talk about the fucking romantics all of it. I could.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
could
your
talk
favorite.
about it.
Yeah, that's your absolute
But
favorite.
they're awful.
If you think about any market, there's usually the progenitor of an idea, right? So like in electrical engineering or something, you have Faraday's laws, and then you have like Tesla coming up with alternating current trinkets, right? And then Edison just destroying his name with a PR campaign, and then having DC Current contracted by the city of New York, right, to power the city. It's you come up with anything like a slap chop or some sort of Ronco rotisserie thing in an infomercial. Usually there's somebody coming up with ShamWow. There's somebody coming up with a prototype. It doesn't necessarily blow the market wide open, and then usually the second or third person finds marketability and carries that idea.
Yeah, fucking Billy Mays comes in here and he's like,
Billy Mays here with eternal life and the promise of utter damnation. He's like, oh, interesting.
I could see Billy Mays as a vampire, yeah.
But wait, there's more.
Well, actually, I mean, that gets into another thing because, like, when it comes, because I mean, vampires have been around for so long that there's so many different takes on, like, what their powers are, what they can do, what they can't do, and whatnot. I mean, fucking Vampire the Masquerade has, like, clans and bloodlines to kind of, like, say, like, oh, no, these vampires do one thing and these vampires do another. Like, it's trying to retcon everything and, like, smush it all together. And so, like, you do get, like, a lot of these things where you have certain vampire clans claiming different historical people. Like, for example, there's a running joke about how Rasputin is actually claimed by, like, multiple clans, which is something that you can't do. But, like, fucking every clan basically says Rasputin is, like, part of them.
Yeah.
He's a Tremere, he's a Malkavian, he's everything,
Mm-hmm.
So I could definitely see fucking Billy Mays coming in here and fucking just, like, he's an actual fucking vampire.
I mean, if he's a vampire, he could easily knock out hours and hours of infomercials without having to rest.
Exactly.
Just,
yes.
Push out more product. You know how it is.
And he's supposedly dead now. So, I mean, like, the fact that, maybe he's just lying low for the next 100 years, and then he's going to, like, pop back in and be like, fucking Bria Mays here with fucking,
He's in torpor.
Exactly.
He'll come out of torpor.
Yeah.
Someone found him and staked him, but he's fine. Give him 5 minutes and a sandwich. He's fine.
Well, that's the thing though. Is like part of what I like about like vampires is that like there's a lot of different ways that you can take it, right? Like, and there's people who are going to be purists who are like, oh no, they have to be this way. But like, there's just a lot of like, like different. Like, even though it's the core stories are the same, the core origin, you take a lot of ways. And so then you have a lot of vampires who bring back that biblical tradition, right? They harken back and say the first vampire was Cain, right? And so
Judas was another one.
Like, so you have these, even though you're distanced from the religion, right? We're not driven by that, but their origin stories are still like seeped in that like Judeo-Christian tradition that is just fascinating, right? And so that's why I enjoy it and the different ways that it can go.
Yeah.
And like even like if you think about like the brief Renaissance, or the not brief, but the Renaissance with Twilight, right? Like I was joking about that last episode. Was like you have this Mormon, right? Who like if you actually read it, it's basically just 4 books against premarital sin. Like why was this
a cautionary tale about having sex before marriage? Yeah.
Yeah, it causes a half vampire baby. And then
That tears your womb apart.
Pedophilia werewolf. Yep.
Yeah.
I love how in that, like, the vampires are basically just X-Men.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like how everybody was like okay with the fact that the werewolf who's been trying to bang her mom all the time sees the baby is like 10 years I'm hitting that.
I know.
Gross.
But like,
Everybody's like, isn't that sweet? No, it was an urge. No, it's not an urge. He's a pedo. Jacob is a pedo. Jacob, pedo.
So is Edward. Let's be real.
I mean, they all have like.
But but that's the whole thing, right? Like the whole, like that whole genre split up, right? So then you had, all of it coming out, right? And so it was like there was just YA everywhere.
Yeah.
And
it blew up again. Yeah.
I don't remember when it did. I want to say personally, in my experience, that what really drove vampires like through the roof was Underworld. I think Underworld.
To the club.
Yes, that was.
Well, I would say that like it
When
actually begins slightly before that with Blade.
Yeah, Blade.
I don't know if Blade and Underworld were roughly about the same time, but there was. I remember for a brief period of time when Underworld first came out, there were people that would live as if they were vampires and if they were werewolves, and would actively they would argue, but they said they were fighting. They would bicker with each other as if they had a war going on. And that was the weirdest thing to watch because they're just nerds, with a lot of poor facial hair, but I'm a werewolf, or you could shave, but whatever makes you happy.
Yeah, it's just some nerd out there with a black trench coat and a katana.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you're not fucking.
Trench coat market went through the fucking roof in the 90s. There's just
until a certain event happened, and then trench coats weren't cool anymore.
Yeah.
What happened? Yeah.
A certain event.
Incorrect. Columbine happened in '96.
Yeah.
And Underworld
then trench coats weren't cool anymore.
Look at Brian's face.
Yeah,
I'm trying to avoid saying
man, we're bringing it all in here.
Yeah, I mean, the 90s were basically a golden age for vampires. You've got Blade 98, you've got Vampire the Masquerade. The first computer game came out in the late 90s. The White Wolf books were going
they
gangbusters.
took a hard turn from scary, because I remember late 80s, early 90s, I don't remember exactly what it was, but Fright Night was out, and that was vampires. I didn't watch it. Horror's never been my genre, but I remember it was supposed to be so scary. All the kids would test their manhood by being like, I watched Fright Night and wasn't scared at all. I'm like, I'm scared by the title.
I mean, you also got Buffy too.
Buffy was big. Buffy was big in the 90s.
Buffy was big too.
But we could do a whole episode on Buffy.
Oh my gosh. Season 3.
You'll just blabber about Angel the whole time.
Season 3 was the best season. Season 3 is fantastic.
We can talk about Buffy later.
Okay.
When did Interview with the Vampire come out? Because
96?
94, I think. The one with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, was that 93?
It was early. It was at least 94, pretty early.
He's like, what are
not
books?
the book. The movie.
Do we need
not the book. Not the book.
Really bad?
It was a book.
No. I don't know. No, see, Anne Rice, her fandom splits when she starts writing about, what was it, Jesus in Egypt? When she starts writing more religiously toned books. But her vampire books I was a big fan of Interview with the Vampire.
That's what started Vampire.
It was 94. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 1976 it came out, and 1994 was the movie. Wow.
See, I didn't really care for the book because I didn't like the little.
Because Louis was a bitch.
No, it was
he was
girl.
a bitch. Louis was a big.
Oh, the little girl. Yeah.
I mean, he was a Toreador, so what do you expect, right?
He was sexually attracted to Claudia. That is gross. You cannot.
We just talked about Twilight with the werewolf banging a baby.
I know.
No, that's.
I know, and I still stand against.
Twilight is disgusting, and you could tell Mormons wrote that.
We're infringing on powers that give you abilities that let you do things that are forbidden.
Yes.
And similar to witchcraft, vampirism is allowing you to live a very long time, kill people who cross you, do whatever you want.
Power fantasy.
Power fantasy. So forbidden things are beholden to vampires to do, right? That's the allure of it.
One of the interesting ones that kind of came out in the 2000s, that a series that I read was you guys ever read the Fat Vampire series by
No, it doesn't
Johnny
count
Truitt?
to pull up and show
Yeah, you failed. So
What?
I really thought you were going to pull it up.
Yeah,
and be
you have
like,
to
have
pull
you
it
ever
up.
read this?
Have you learned nothing from
No.
Valor Presentation? Get it together.
No, I didn't.
No
I didn't
sources
do
count
it.
unless you can pull them up directly.
I just
Together,
magic them up and fucking like.
Right.
I was looking up who the author was and when it came out. But
When Brian doesn't have it, he puts a little screenshot next to it.
you know how many? No,
Together.
no, go away.
But I think we're getting close on time. Are we going to continue Vampires next week?
I feel like we need to go. Well, next week is the
I
book.
would love to continue them because they are so
Next
fun.
week.
There's so much.
Now, here's a question for you, Joel, because before we get off of this, I want to, like, because this has prompted a little bit more research into vampires for you, yes?
Mm-hmm.
How do
I
you
have 3
feel
books
about
I've
them
read.
now?
They're on the book. Well, 2 because I loaned 1 to Ben. They're your books. Fine. Missy has books that she has in her bookshelf that I plan on reading. One is by Montague Summers. It's called Vampire and Vampirism. That's the one I plan on starting to do. And he was considered to be, up until he was unseated by John McNay, in 1939, to be considered the best and most
the authority on vampires.
the authority on vampires in the world. And the book's wonderful. It's in like old typecast and everything. I love it. It just, you can tell it's an ancient book, and I think he's so happy. Not for you, ancient, for the rest of it.
So what was your question, Brian?
Well,
I'm
I mean,
reading more.
because like initially Joel was like, okay, well, you know, vampires are kind of uninteresting and whatnot. They just like
No, I
blood
don't. I
all the
don't
time
like
and
the
whatnot.
I don't like the way they're portrayed in the media, where a lot of them are just like very reduction. I love the
Yeah.
vampire stories.
Mm-hmm.
In the media nowadays, modern vampires are just literally running around trying to find some way to do something with blood, and the characters could be so much more interesting. But it's like, what are you gonna do today? They're like, blood. What about tomorrow? More blood. And they're like, what are you gonna do? Blood bath, blood drink, blood sprinklers. For fuck's sake, you're 500 years old. Figure something else out.
Blood magic.
Right. Everything is blood related. Like, get a blood Capri Sun and go walk out in the world and fucking do some shit. Like, you can get the blood bags, just drink it, and go out and do something. It's just very reductive. I think it was the last Blade movie that really just drove me nuts. We're like,
Trinity. Yeah.
yeah, we're like, they're just sitting there swimming in giant vats of blood. First off, have you ever let blood out for more than like 45 minutes? That shit dries and reeks to high heaven. So now, not
It congeals really fast.
yeah. So they're swimming in basically blood jello, reeking to high heaven, and they're like, isn't this great? No, it's disgusting. You are disgusting, foul beasts rolling around in blood jello, reeking to high heaven. There's nothing magical about this. Go fuck yourself.
I didn't realize someone could be so ornery.
Yeah, I could super be ornery. I'm an old man. Back in my day, vampires they drank blood and killed people like normal people. They don't swim in blood like
Or like
these
the
blood
blood sprinklers and the other
Right.
in the vampire nightclub.
Yeah.
Oh, the opening a blade.
Yeah.
See, I read all of the Vampire Chronicles from Anne Rice, and they did shit. They did a whole bunch.
Yeah.
They're always out doing stuff, and that's what made it cool. The blood drinking is what makes the dislike a lot of the vampire stories. Is the blood drinking it becomes forefront. Like, that becomes their only thing. I eat every day, several times a day, but my life is not, what are you going to do? Breakfast. Then as soon as I'm done with breakfast, lunchtime. What about the times in between you're eating? I'm thinking about eating. No, there's a whole bunch of other shit. And I think they just, in the stories of the vampires, they just leave them to, it's just this nonstop pursuit of blood. I'm not going to go and like eat a yogurt and then when I'm full and can't eat any more yogurt, smear my body with yogurt. And be like,
You're not
oh,
really
yeah.
selling this immortality thing if all I can think about now is blood.
Yeah, and that's the part that makes it tedious. Is like,
Yeah.
what else are you doing?
Yeah.
Because
A
in
huge-
immortal
yeah.
life, you spend every waking moment of your life. And I also think it's
Going to high school over and over and over.
Yeah, right.
You want them to keep educating them?
you have,
No,
like-
I want
You
them
want them to do something?
Get a job, sir.
you have like you have like a whole you have a whole like immortal life to like get good at any fucking hobby you decide to do, and you decide I'm gonna go to high school every 20
What
years.
is wrong with this side of the screens? Can fuck themselves. Like,
It's a
honestly,
No, but there's that sense of
No, that's what I'm that's the statement I'm
like-
making. Is like what is it with like the whole like high school vampire thing where it's like You could
My-
you could decide to like become like the best artist, the best blacksmith, the best whatever, and like refine your talent and become.
Vampires burn. Remember? That's one of the common things. They're very fire.
Well, they're not always fire. I mean, but maybe that adds to the thrill.
That's by far the most interesting part of Interview with the Vampire when I first read it, was the concept of what do you do with immortality.
Right.
First discovering it, figuring out how it is to be a vampire, and the initial, finding your locker, if we're going to stick with the high school metaphor. But once you are a vampire,
I am sick of 3/4 of this panel right now. Brian, well done for not being annoying.
What do you do wrong?
What do you do with immortality?
Have you read High School Vampire?
Joel is a very good point.
What I was going to ask was, go ahead.
Yeah, but if you're approaching 100 years of life as a vampire, maybe 110, 120, and you're like, what's for dinner? More blood, it's going to be absolutely boring.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Yeah. Is we are now saturated with vampire stories. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And it becomes, when you write a story about an ancient vampire, 200-300 years old, and their plan is just all blood-based. You're like, well, what else do you do with yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did you live for 200 years and you're still just obsessed with it? You don't find a way to, I'm 44 years old. I don't spend every waking moment of my life wondering how I'm going to get food into my mouth. I do a whole bunch of other shit. And I feel
like that's the thing between Lestat and like an Interview with a Vampire as an example. What's the other guy's name? There's Lestat and
Louis.
Well, there's a whole bunch of other ones. But the thing about
so
Interview
like
with a Vampire that really stood out was the older you got, the less you needed to drink.
Yeah.
Like, so get the super old vampires need to drink like once a year.
Yeah.
But I would like to go back to what Brian said, and we can do another episode.
I would love to do another episode. Vampires are fun. The stories, a lot of the stories nowadays are
so next week we have so like I'd say, so we have the Clive Barker book next week, unless we want to push. Do we want to push that back or?
Wait, no, Brian wasn't done.
Sorry, Brian. You finished what you
You're
were
good.
saying.
Well, I was just saying, like, because we have, like, Joel, who's got, he's been doing a little bit more interest in the topic of vampires. We got Missy here and whatnot. I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, maybe I should pitch my vampire.
Damn it, Brian! I was on your side! I was on your side, Brian!
Brian's over here like, you just activated my trap card.
I was rooting for you!
I know.
You stop.
So Missy, we playing vampire next Monday?
I'll play vampire. Like, I just need a direction.
Missy, you want to get in on this shit over here?
You want to play vampire?
It was fantastic.
Some old as shit fucking gothic vampire. You know how it is.
In all honesty, I would like to do another one. I feel the lore is like, I started reading some of the books and I love them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I mean like actual like textbooks about vampires, like informative books, not just stories. But I would definitely welcome doing another one.
So Missy, you want to play vampire on Monday?
No.
No. I'm gonna be honest. Right now, she's her belly is big enough right now, and this little girl is not allowing her to breathe well, so she's struggling with sitting there. She could not make it to a tabletop game. We will after the birth, we will commence pushing her, especially when she's emotionally weak due to the hormones. We'll just really drive it home.
Oh no!
I didn't want you to hear that. I'm sorry.
I did say I forget why he was sad. And I told him I would play once, and he said I wouldn't take advantage of your pity.
No, I didn't want you to play D&D. Oh, that's right. When David couldn't come to the wedding because he got COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would like to. Brian? What is the scope for next week? What are we going to be focusing on with vampires?
Well, we have the book.
Is it next week or is it the book?
Yeah, the next week is the book.
Yes.
Next Monday is the Clive Barker book. Mm-hmm.
That book was a journey.
Is it the Hellbound
Heart?
The Hellbound Heart. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hellbound Heart. Yeah.
I do appreciate that you guys pick books that are free on Kindle Unlimited. I think Ben, Brian, and Brendan have all picked free books, and I own the other one. So
Yeah, so I
You
mean,
fuckers have
Oh, they haven't been free for me, but I've had to spend a credit, but it's fine.
It helps when all my books are trash.
yeah.
Yeah.
So many paperbacks.
So next week, but the week after, what are we gonna?
We have our collaboration with the original GM.
What day is
their
that? Next
group.
Monday?
That's
Not
next
week,
month.
the
That's 2 Mondays from now.
Mhm.
In the
Just for
meantime,
everybody's notice,
Yep.
second half of October, my attendance will be intermittent. So will Missy's, because
Yeah.
we are going to be having Elizabeth brought into the world at any point in time. So if you don't see me, that's what's happening.
Yep. So
Please tell me like the middle name is going to be Bathory. Just
It is. It's
for
actually
sheer fun.
Elizabeth
You just-
Bathory. No, it's Carolyn. Elizabeth Carolyn.
No. So so we might not be seeing Joel and Missy in the end of October, but for the next 2 weeks, we've got next week we will be covering doing a book talk on The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, and then we have our regularly scheduled D&D game of Candle Keep Mysteries on every Wednesday, and then on October 10th,
Will we get our new player in another
Yep.
week? Correct.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay.
So we have our and then on October 10th, I believe. Yes, October 10th, we will be doing a collaboration stream with the original GM. We'll be talking. They're another D&D group that we follow, and we're gonna be doing a little back and forth on our thoughts on RPGs and all kinds of things like that. It'll be a fun time. So that's what we'll be doing then. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it for the day. Again, as always, remember table NOL 15. Yes, NOL.
I believe you're talking about tabletoploot.com.
Yeah.
It's my one-stop shop to get all of my dice. You sign up before the 20th of each month, and $25 gets you monthly dice delivered to your door, minimum 4 sets. You can go to their store right now and use the code NOL15 to get 15% off any set of dice in their store. And there's
including vampires.
I've already gotten October's dice
Yeah.
in. And
Mine
they're
just
really
came in.
nice.
So we'll be doing that, or there's always that if you want to use your discount code.
Don't forget to check out our YouTube channels and all of our social medias, including Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, so on and so forth. I'm sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, like Brian said, check out our social media, and we'll see you guys again on Wednesday. I've been Ben. That's been Brian. There's Joel and Misty, and then Brendan. And bye.